Part 1. The demon you fight is the wound you refuse to heal. There's a moment in every deeply reflective life where the noise falls away. It might happen in solitude. It might happen in suffering. Maybe it creeps in during a sleepless night, or after a big loss, or in the stillness following a fake smile. But when it comes, it's unmistakable. You feel the weight of something ancient stirring inside you. It's not panic. It's not anxiety. It's something deeper, something darker, and yet something strangely familiar. This is the moment when your inner demon shows up not to haunt you, but to invite you to finally see it. But what do we do when it appears? We react, we panic, we label it as evil. We try to exorcise it with self-help mantras and toxic positivity. We drown it in distraction, scrolling, smoking, shopping, sex, success. Anything to avoid feeling the rawness of what it's trying to show us. We treat it like an intruder. But what if it's not? What if your inner demon isn't here to destroy you but to reveal you? This is the first lie we must confront, that the demon is your enemy. It's not. It's your shadow, your wound, your protector in disguise. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And he meant that the more we repress our inner darkness, the more power it gains in the unconscious. The demon becomes dangerous not because it's evil, but because it's ignored, because we pretend it's not there, because we exile parts of ourselves and then wonder why we feel broken. Let's talk about this logically. If a child is screaming in pain and you keep locking them in a room, what happens over time? They don't heal. They become louder, more aggressive, more desperate. That's exactly what your inner demon is, a younger, unintegrated part of you that was hurt, silenced, misunderstood. It doesn't need to be punished. It needs to be parented. And that's where most of us get it wrong. We try to conquer it like a villain in a movie. But this isn't a battle. It's a reunion. Think of the demon as the wounded messenger of your soul. It appears when something important has been forgotten, when a truth has been buried, when a part of you has been disowned. And the tragedy is that instead of listening, we attack. We chant affirmations to silence it. We take pills to sedate it. We chase external validation to distract from it. But the demon doesn't leave. It waits quietly, patiently, until you're finally ready to stop running. This is where the journey begins, not with war, but with curiosity. The next time that voice rises in you, the one that says you're not enough, or that you'll fail, or that you'll be abandoned, don't silence it. Sit with it. Ask it, where did you come from? How long have you been here? What are you trying to protect me from? This might sound strange, even unnatural. But remember, you talk to yourself all day. The question is, who's talking back?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's where things get deeper. Your inner demon doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in emotion, in archetype, in energy. It's the embodiment of every time you were told you weren't good enough. Every time you were punished for being too sensitive or too loud or too different. Every time you chose silence instead of truth, approval instead of authenticity. The demon is not evil. It's evidence. It's the emotional residue of your unprocessed life. Philosophy backs this up. Nietzsche said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. What did he mean? That if you spend your life fighting your inner darkness, treating it as something to be destroyed, you risk becoming cold, fragmented, bitter. But if you integrate it, if you understand it, you become whole. You become dangerous in the best way, powerful, grounded, unshakable. Let me ask you something radical. What if the part of you you're most ashamed of is actually the most sacred? What if your jealousy, your rage, your fear, what if these aren't signs of weakness, but invitations to deeper truth? What if your demon is not a flaw, but a function? A signal that something inside you needs attention, compassion, and reintegration. This is not about romanticizing darkness. It's about redeeming it. Because when you treat your inner demon like the enemy, it becomes one. But when you approach it with compassion, it softens. It reveals its true form not as a monster, but as a memory. A memory of when you learned it wasn't safe to be yourself. A memory of when you made a vow, I'll never show this part of me again. And that vow, made in fear, became a prison. And here's the haunting truth. Most of us are still living in that prison. We've built our entire personality around avoiding pain, around being liked, around staying safe. But safety is not the same as freedom. And the longer you avoid your inner demon, the more your life shrinks. The more you play small, the more your relationships feel hollow, because you're not showing up fully. You're showing up filtered. So what's the alternative? Integration, not control, not suppression. Integration means facing the demon, feeling the feelings, hearing the story, and saying, you're allowed to exist. That doesn't mean you act out your pain. It means you honor it. You create space for it. You stop making it wrong. And slowly the demon loses its grip. Not because it's been defeated, but because it's been seen. Let me give you a practical example. You feel massive jealousy towards someone. Your first instinct is to judge yourself. I shouldn't feel this. I'm better than this. But what if you paused and asked, what is this jealousy trying to show me? Maybe it's pointing to a dream you've abandoned. Maybe it's highlighting your own sense of inadequacy. The demon is the messenger. The jealousy is the signal. The transformation lies in the interpretation. This is the kind of inner work that changes lives. Not because it makes you more popular or productive, but because it makes you real. And realness is rare. Realness scares people. Realness sets you free. When you stop treating your inner demon like a mistake and start treating it like a map, you begin to reclaim all the energy you've wasted hiding, performing, pretending. And here's the beautiful paradox. The parts of you you've rejected the longest are often the parts with the most to give. Your pain becomes your purpose. Your grief becomes your gateway. Your shadow becomes your strength. But none of that happens until you stop fighting and start feeling. Until you stop labeling and start listening. So ask yourself this, what part of me have I been demonizing that might actually be sacred? What if the voice I've been trying to silence has something important to say? What if the shame I've buried holds the key to my deepest power? These are not surface-level questions. These are soul-level invitations, and they require courage. Not the courage to slay a demon, but the courage to sit with one. Because here's the ultimate truth. your inner demon is not evil. It's exiled, and it's waiting for you to come home. Part 2, what you've been calling darkness is actually untouched power. So you've stopped running. You've paused the fight. You've taken your hands off the weapons and sat down in the quiet, the sacred silence that lingers when you stop treating yourself like a battle to be won. This is the moment most people avoid their entire lives. Because when the noise falls away, when the chaos quiets, you're left with something far more terrifying than fear. It's truth. And truth doesn't shout. It doesn't pound on your chest. It whispers. It waits. It reveals. This is where the real journey begins. Not with self-improvement, not with positivity, but with presence. When you finally stop calling your pain bad and start sitting beside it like an old friend, something shifts. You begin to see that your inner demon isn't some evil force tormenting you, it's unprocessed potential. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow is 90% pure gold." That's not philosophy. That's instruction. Your shadow is not some dark, malevolent spirit. It is your unlived life. It's the version of you that was silenced, shamed, or shut down. It's the courage you buried to be accepted, the truth you swallowed to stay safe, the tears you never shed because vulnerability felt like weakness. That energy didn't disappear, it transformed into what you now call your inner demon. But what if it's not a demon at all? What if it's just a part of you that's been screaming to be seen? Here's what most of us don't want to admit. We're not really afraid of our darkness, we're afraid of our light. We know, somewhere deep in our bones, that if we stop playing small, everything changes. If we own our truth, we'll lose the comfort of being liked. If we speak our mind, we might be rejected. If we stop hiding, we might be seen. And being seen, truly seen, is one of the most terrifying and liberating experiences a human can have. True power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration, from accepting the full spectrum of who you are, your rage and your grace, your doubt and your wisdom, your fear and your fire. Most people are trying to be good when they should be trying to be whole. There's a difference. Goodness is often performative. Wholeness is raw, unfiltered, and deeply real. And that's what the demon is calling you toward, wholeness. Let's talk about triggers. Think back to the last time you were triggered, not irritated, but deeply shaken. Your heart raced. Your stomach knotted. Maybe you lashed out, or maybe you shut down. And then, afterward, you judged yourself. But what if I told you that trigger was sacred? That it was your demon knocking on the door, saying, "There's something here you haven't healed." Triggers are not flaws, they're flashlights. They illuminate what remains unhealed. They show you where you're still living from fear, from shame, from the beliefs you inherited but never questioned. When you treat your triggers like enemies, you miss the gift. But when you pause and ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" that's when you begin to transform. That's when the demon becomes the guide. And here's the key: your emotions are messengers. Anger is not evil, it's a boundary that's been crossed. Fear isn't weakness, it's your system telling you something important. Sadness isn't a problem, it's a sign you felt something deeply. But when we label these as bad, we suppress their intelligence. And suppressed emotion doesn't disappear, it mutates. It becomes anxiety. It becomes burnout. It becomes the demon we think we need to fight. The truth is, you were never taught how to feel. You were taught how to perform, how to please, or how to be productive. But rarely were you taught how to sit with grief, how to listen to fear, how to honor anger without becoming it. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now. Because the longer you avoid these parts of you, the louder they'll knock. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. This is where ancient wisdom becomes incredibly relevant. In many Eastern traditions, demons are not inherently evil. They're misunderstood. In Tibetan Buddhism, for example, practitioners visualize their demons during meditation not to destroy them, but to understand them. These demons represent unresolved karma, suppressed emotion, and unconscious patterns. And when you face them with compassion, they dissolve not into nothingness, but into wisdom. So what if you treated your inner demon this way? Not as something to fix, not as something to fight, but as something to learn from. What if you got curious about your jealousy, your insecurity, your rage? What if instead of judging them, you asked them why they exist? I'll tell you what would happen. You'd start to dismantle the prison you've been living in brick by brick, belief by belief. Here's a question that could change your life. What if your most painful emotion is just a message in a language you haven't learned to read yet? What if your shame is trying to tell you about a boundary you keep crossing against yourself? What if your anxiety is a rebellion your body saying, I can't live this lie anymore? What if your depression is your soul's way of pulling you into stillness because you've been sprinting away from truth? When you stop viewing your emotions as problems, you open the door to profound healing. You begin to trust yourself, not just the parts that get applause, but the parts that tremble in the dark. And something magical happens. Your inner demon stops screaming. Not because it's gone, but because it's finally been heard. And when it's heard, it transforms. Think of this like alchemy. You're not erasing the darkness, you're refining it. You're taking the raw, unfiltered, unaccepted parts of yourself and turning them into depth, strength, clarity. That's what true transformation is. Not becoming someone new, but reclaiming the parts of you that were lost. And that's what the demon is offering, not destruction, but reintegration. So the next time you feel that darkness rise, the fear, the shame, the rage, don't run. Don't numb. Don't pretend. Sit. Listen. Ask it what it needs. Ask it what it's trying to protect. And then give it what no one else ever did, your full, undivided presence. Because your inner demon isn't evil. It's exiled. And the moment you stop treating it like a threat, it becomes a guide, a mentor, a mirror. And through that mirror, you'll see a version of yourself that's been waiting not to be saved, but to be seen. Part 3, integration is the final rebellion. You face the truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You've stopped running from the shadow, the pain, the voice inside you that you used to call evil. Now you are sitting in the aftermath not of destruction, but of revelation. You are seeing clearly for perhaps the first time, and what you're seeing is not a monster, but a mirror. The reflection is raw. It's uncomfortable. But it's also alive, pulsing with the energy of something ancient and true. And that truth is this: you are not broken. You are complete, but only when you stop rejecting your complexity. You can't go back to how things were. Once you've seen your inner demon for what it really is, a voice of pain, a cry for integration, you can't unsee it. The mask you used to wear now feels heavy. The roles you used to play now feel hollow. And the lies you used to tell yourself no longer work. The world around you will still try to seduce you back into the smallness, into the performance, into the illusion of safety. But deep down, you know that if you betray the truth you've uncovered, the cost will be your soul. And nothing is worth that price. Integration is not glamorous. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's not a viral quote or a quick fix. It's the slow, sacred process of saying to every part of you, light and shadow alike, you belong. It is not a justification of your wounds, but a reconciliation with them. You stop seeing your inner demon as a flaw and start recognizing it as a fragment of your being that was exiled to survive. And now, that fragment wants to come home. Not to control you, but to complete you. Because you cannot be whole while you are still at war with yourself. To integrate is to rebel against everything you were taught to believe about yourself. The real revolution is not in changing the world, it begins with changing how you relate to your own pain. When you stop rejecting the parts of you that were shaped in trauma, you stop being a slave to them. You move from reaction to response, from suppression to embodiment. You begin to live from a place that is deeper than fear, stronger than shame, and more honest than performance. This is the power that comes not from pretending to be invincible, but from embracing your humanity fully. Nietzsche once said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." That quote is often repeated but rarely understood. Chaos is not dysfunction. It is the raw, unfiltered energy of truth that hasn't yet found a form. It's the storm before the clarity, the breakdown before the breakthrough. Most people try to avoid chaos because it feels out of control. But if you avoid your inner chaos, you also avoid your creative potential, your authenticity, and your power. The dancing star is not born in silence, it emerges from the storm. So how do we begin to integrate? First, with radical honesty. You must tell yourself the truth you've been avoiding, even if it makes your voice shake. That means admitting where you're still performing, where you're still seeking approval, where you're still living someone else's version of your life. Radical honesty is not about shame, it's about liberation. Because until you're honest with yourself, you are not free. You are still a prisoner of the illusion. Ask yourself the questions that most people are too afraid to even consider. Where am I still pretending? What emotion have I buried so deep that I've forgotten how to feel it? Who would I become if I stopped needing to be liked, admired, or accepted? These questions will make you uncomfortable. They'll stir the parts of you that have been dormant for years. But they will also wake you up to a truth that is more powerful than any external validation, the truth of who you really are. Next, bring your awareness into your body. The demon does not only live in the mind, it is stored in the body, in the tension in your shoulders, in the tightness in your chest, in the pit in your stomach. You must feel to heal. This is not optional. You must give your body permission to release what your mind has been holding for years. That means breathing deeply. That means moving, crying, shaking, screaming, whatever your body needs to do to finally let go. Rituals help too, not because they're magical, but because they create space for meaning. Light a candle and speak to the part of you that was rejected. Write a letter to the demon and ask it what it needs. Create a ceremony where you honor the pain that shaped you, not as something to erase, but as something to finally understand. Integration is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong devotion to your wholeness. And every time you choose to include what you used to exclude, you reclaim a part of your soul. And here's the part no one tells you: integration is lonely. Not because you're wrong, but because most people are still asleep. When you begin to live as your whole self, you disrupt the norm. You no longer play the game. You no longer say what people want to hear. And that threatens those who are still hiding behind masks. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. And that is a trade worth making every single time. When you stop trying to be liked and start being true, you become a mirror. You reflect back to others what they've buried in themselves. Some will be drawn to you. Others will be terrified. That is not your responsibility. Your only job is to stay aligned with your own truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's misunderstood, even when it costs you everything you thought you needed. Because what you gain is far greater: your own integrity. So let me ask you now, seriously and slowly, what would your life look like if you stopped apologizing for your depth? What would happen if you stopped editing your truth to make others feel more comfortable? What kind of love would you attract if you were no longer hiding your most authentic self? What kind of world would you help create if you stopped shrinking to fit into someone else's expectations? These are not philosophical questions. These are the doorways to freedom. Because when you integrate your inner demon, you stop seeing yourself as a problem to be fixed. You become the embodiment of wholeness. Your pain becomes presence. Your shame becomes wisdom. Your fear becomes fuel. You become someone who no longer chases validation, because you've already found something deeper: self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It draws in the right people, the right opportunities, the right alignment without force. In a world obsessed with image, wholeness is revolutionary. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to dominate to lead. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be real. Realness is rare. Realness is raw. Realness is what changes people, not your performance, but your presence. And presence only comes when you no longer fear your own reflection. Because the final truth is this: your inner demon was never your enemy. It was your invitation. It wasn't trying to destroy you, it was trying to wake you up, to show you the pieces of yourself you left behind, to guide you back to your soul. And now that you've seen it, you don't need to conquer it. You need to welcome it, not with fear, but with reverence. You are the portal. You are the alchemist. You are the one you've been waiting for. The demon was only ever the door. And now the door is open. Walk through it.